Right, I've got something to tell you that's slightly embarrassing. I'm a tax strategist, aren't I? I spend my days helping wealthy people avoid accidentally giving their money to HMRC. I read finance acts for fun. I have used the phrase hold period implications in normal conversation and meant it sincerely. So last week I sat on my sofa and I cried at a TV show about pigs. All of it. Binged the whole thing. The pigs that died, the ones that got sold off, because the numbers just didn't work. And I want to be clear about this. These were not dignified, tasteful tears. This was full ugly crying at somebody else's livestock at 5 in the afternoon, with me tea sitting next to us going cold. And then the episode ends and autoplay kicked in. Up pops Jimmy Carr. That's a tax story for another day. And that is the next video in the list. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And don't forget to give this video a like. It costs you nothing and it tells YouTube to show it to more people who need to hear it. Anyway, I'm telling you all of this because everyone who watches that show comes away with the same daydream. A little farm, a village pub, something real, something you can stand on, something that doesn't involve a laptop. So today I'm going to do something deeply unromantic and I'm going to show you the actual maths. And the maths says both of these are, and I'm choosing my words carefully for a family audience, two of the worst businesses in Britain. Stay with me, the people selling you the dream are not the ones paying the bill. So as you might have gathered, we're talking about Clarkson's Farm. Here is why farms and pubs feel like dream assets. They're tangible. You can stand on the land. You can pull a pint in your own pub. After 30 years staring at a screen, owning something that smells of mud and hops and actual life feels like you've finally won something real. And television has done absolutely nothing to help with this. Clarkson bought a farm. Then he opened a pub. Then he made 4 series of television about how badly all of it was going, and in the process became significantly more famous and significantly more wealthy. £144. That is what the farm made in its first year as a farming operation. To put that in context, I've found more than that down the back of the sofa. As a television concept, however, diddly squat has made him a fortune. Clarkson's net worth, TV, writing and presenting, not crops. The farm is not the business. The show about the farm is the business. The struggle is the content. He has said himself he could sell the land and earn more from the interest than he'll ever make from agriculture, which now that I think about it is exactly the advice I give clients. But let's not linger on that. Here's what the daydream leaves out. Talk to the people actually doing this, the farmers who've been at it 40 years, the ones up before dawn to deliver a return that wouldn't embarrass a savings account. Almost none of them call it the British dream. They call it a lifestyle, which in financial terms is a polite way of saying a hobby you can't afford to stop. Jeremy can absorb the loss because he earns elsewhere. For most people, the loss is the entire point. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Say you inherit a farm worth 5 million quid. On paper, you're rich. In reality, you've been handed a machine for converting beautiful countryside into debt in extremely early mornings. A working farm yields next to nothing on the capital, about 1% on a good year and often a loss, You have 5 million quid tied up in an asset that returns less than a reasonable bank account, and the cost of that return is getting up before sunrise every day for the rest of your working life. Now, here's where it gets properly uncomfortable. The only reason farms like this have ever made hard financial sense, the only reason anyone rational held onto a loss-making asset across generations was inheritance tax. You could pass the whole farm on completely tax-free forever. The annual losses were just the entry fee. The IHT shelter was the prize. That prize is gone. From this April, the full relief is capped at 2.5 million. Everything above that gets 50% relief, which sounds generous until you work out at a 40% tax rate means you are paying 20% on everything over the cap, not 0, 20. On your 5 million farm, that is roughly £500,000 owed to HMRC. £500,000 on an asset that earns you almost nothing and requires your physical presence at 5 in the morning to deliver even that. You can spread the payments over 10 years, which is thoughtful of them. You may still have to sell part of the land to pay the tax on the land, which is considerably less so. That is not wealth. That is a liability with a very pleasant view. The pub is worse, and it is worse in a sneakier way because people assume it is the same play. It's not. Buy a freehold pub for 800,000 quid, decent local, 500,000 going through the till each year. Work yourself into the ground brilliantly, and in a good year, I mean a genuinely exceptional year, you might get 30,000 quid. 30,000 on an £800,000 building. That is a return of under 4%, and you have bought yourself a 70-hour week to earn it. That another way, you are making roughly £8.50 an hour, which is coincidentally what someone working at an actual job gets paid to stand somewhere warm and do none of the work. You're not an investor. You have bought a low-paid job, given it an oak beam ceiling, and somehow convinced yourself it's a business. And here's the trap people walk into with their eyes wide open. They assume the pub gets the same inheritance tax shelter as the farm. It doesn't. There is no agricultural relief on a pub. The only option is business property relief. And that only holds for genuine trading businesses. The moment your pub starts struggling and you're really just sitting on a building with moore's flats, that vanishes. The freehold everyone's counting on to bail them out is the very thing that kills the tax break. You get the losses, you get the 70-hour week, and the tax position is worse than the farm. Right. So what are you buying? A pub or a farm? Let me know in the comments below. I read them all and I reply to them all. So what would I actually do? Clients ask me what I would do if I inherited one of these. I tell them straight. I would sell. Not because there is anything wrong with farming or running a pub as a way of life, but because I can count. Here's the logic. Hold the asset and eventually a big chunk of it's tax, because the shelter is capped and you are not passing it on cleanly anymore. Sell it instead, and yes, you pay capital gains tax, but only on the growth, only once, and then you're out, you're free, and you have the capital that can actually work for you. This logic holds most clearly for someone who's inherited the asset and has years of running it ahead of them. It's not automatically true for an elderly owner who has held it decades and who qualifies for most of the relief and would get a CGT uplift on death anyway. That is a different conversation. But for most people sitting on one of these, yes, the cleaner, smaller hit is to sell. Then I would put the money where the economy is actually going. We're in the middle of something genuinely large. AI, energy, the infrastructure being built around both of them. I would rather own a liquid slice of that, something I can sell in 3 seconds from my phone on a beach, than 1,000 acres that need me outside before sunrise to return 1%. Markets fall, I know that. I'm not glossing over it. But look at what you are comparing. One locks your capital in a single asset, in one location, in one industry that is structurally under pressure and demands your physical presence to produce almost nothing. The other, you can exit in an afternoon. It compounds while you sleep. It doesn't need you at 5 in the morning. It isn't one bad harvest or one dead high street away from worthless. The genuinely wealthy worked this out a long time ago. They do not grind a struggling business for a 1% yield and a 6-figure tax bill. They hold liquid wealth, structure it properly, and spend the actual time on whatever they want. The farm and the pub are where people lose money trying to look wealthy. Real wealth is quiet, liquid, and it does not smell of a cellar. Maybe you didn't choose any of this. Maybe a farm or a pub landed in your lap. Or you're 3 years into one wondering where your evenings went. You don't fix that by working harder. You fix it by restructuring properly or getting out cleanly before the tax bill or the bank loan makes that decision for you. Those two options are very different, and the gap between them is the difference between walking away ahead or being dragged out behind. That is the entire job I do. I help business owners and people sitting on inherited assets stop hemorrhaging money and structure their wealth so it actually works for them. The link is in the description. Apply for a strategy review at apply.ctprivateoffice.com. We don't take everyone, but if this conversation made sense to you, you're exactly the right person. If this video made you rethink the dream even slightly, like it. It costs you nothing, and it tells YouTube to put it in front of more people who need to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't. The Jimmy Carr video is next, and you absolutely want to watch that one. Drop a comment below. Are you buying the pub or the farm? Thank you for watching. Every like, every comment, every subscribe helps us keep making these. It costs you nothing and it means a great deal.